1 minute ago, Israel just sent a two-word message that sent shockwaves through London and Keir Starmer's face reportedly turned white. 2 words. That's all it took to throw Labour into total panic mode and send Westminster scrambling for damage control. Forget press conferences, forget diplomatic language. Israel's government just broke every rule of polite diplomacy and went straight for the jugular. Let's break this down because this might be the most explosive moment in UK-Israel relations since Britain recognised Palestine last week. It all started when Israel's Prime Minister delivered a blunt 2-word statement: diplomatic war. That's it. No explanation, no soft phrasing. Just those 2 words, and London immediately went into overdrive. Starmer's government reportedly held an emergency security briefing within the hour. Cabinet ministers were rushed into Downing Street, intelligence chiefs called in, and Whitehall went completely silent, which, if you know Westminster, is the surest sign that something massive is happening behind the scenes. Here's why this is so shocking. When a country says diplomatic war, that's not just angry rhetoric. It means relations are entering a freeze. Embassies could be recalled, intelligence sharing could be downgraded, and joint operations could stop overnight. For a country like Britain, which relies heavily on Israeli intelligence for counter-terrorism, that's a nightmare scenario. Tory MPs are already on every media outlet screaming about betrayal and national security risks. One MP literally said, "This is handing Britain's enemies the keys to the kingdom." The panic inside Labour HQ is reportedly off the charts. But here's the part that nobody expected: Israel isn't bluffing. Within minutes of the announcement, reports started coming in that several joint intelligence briefings were postponed. Indefinitely, British defence officials are now scrambling to reassure NATO allies that this won't compromise wider security operations. Washington, meanwhile, is losing its mind. The State Department issued an unusually sharp statement warning that allies must work together to de-escalate tensions before irreversible damage is done. Translation: Washington is terrified this could break one of the most important security networks in the West. And yet here's the twist: public opinion in Britain doesn't seem to be moving against Starmer. Early polling this morning actually shows Labour gaining 2 points since the Palestine recognition announcement. That means a majority of Brits are basically saying, yes, we expected blowback, but we're fine with it. This is exactly what Starmer's team is betting on, that the British public is ready for a new chapter in Middle East policy, even if it comes at a steep diplomatic cost. The risk? If Israel follows through on a full diplomatic freeze, Britain could lose access to crucial intelligence, just as terror threats are rising globally. That would put Starmer in the most dangerous position of his premiership, balancing national security with moral foreign policy. The question now is simple. Will Israel escalate from words to actions? Diplomatic war could just be a warning shot, or it could be the start of the biggest breakdown in UK-Israel relations since 1948. Every capital from Washington to Riyadh is watching what Starmer does next. What's happening right now behind closed doors is nothing short of political theatre on a global stage, except this time, nobody's acting. Sources from inside the Labour Party are leaking like a broken pipe, describing total chaos and paralysis inside Downing Street. Apparently, Starmer's closest advisors are split right down the middle. One camp is urging him to hold firm, arguing that backing down now would make Britain look weak and turn his historic recognition of Palestine into a hollow gesture. The other camp is practically begging him to offer some kind of reassurance to Israel before this spirals into a full-blown diplomatic Cold War. And the Prime Minister? Reports say he spent hours locked in his office reading intelligence briefings while aides paced outside. Some even say he refused to take calls from Washington until the emergency meeting was over. That is not normal behaviour for a UK Prime Minister, and it shows just how high the stakes are. The ripple effect across Europe is just as wild. Germany, which already had an existential meltdown over Britain's recognition move, has now entered panic mode. Their foreign minister issued a midnight statement saying this is a dangerous escalation with unpredictable consequences. Translation: Berlin is terrified that Israel's diplomatic war will drag the entire European bloc into the crisis. Spain and Ireland, which were publicly flirting with following Britain's lead on Palestinian recognition, have suddenly gone quiet. No press briefings, no new announcements, just radio silence. France, always eager to look like the adult in the room, is reportedly preparing its own statement, calling for restraint and dialogue, which is French for please don't blow up what's left of our Middle East diplomacy. But it's the Arab world that's watching this drama with the most interest and, frankly, the most excitement. Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince has not walked back a single one of the investment commitments he made after Britain's recognition announcement. In fact, Riyadh just hinted that an even bigger economic package might be on the table if Britain stands firm. The UAE and Qatar have also doubled down, reportedly speeding up negotiations on joint energy and infrastructure deals. This is why Starmer might actually hold his ground, because the economic rewards for Britain could be enormous. Billions in Arab investment would mean jobs, growth, and a political win that Labour could take to the next election. The calculation is simple. Endure the short-term storm with Israel, cash in the long-term economic and diplomatic rewards. But here's the risk: if Israel decides to take this fight beyond diplomacy, things could get ugly very fast. And let's be very clear, Israel has options. They could recall their ambassador entirely, suspend intelligence sharing, or even push Washington to apply real pressure on London through trade, through defence agreements, through every diplomatic lever they have. If that happens, Starmer will face the biggest political test of his career. Can he keep Britain secure while standing by a moral decision that half the world is now watching? Conservative MPs are already smelling blood. They are lining up in Parliament to accuse Starmer of gambling with British lives. One particularly fiery backbencher claimed that Downing Street has declared war on Britain's most trusted ally. That's the kind of rhetoric that sticks, and if there's even one major security incident in the coming weeks, you can bet Labour will be blamed for it. Meanwhile, the Americans are reportedly furious that Britain didn't give them a heads up before this crisis exploded. Leaked reports from Washington claim that the White House National Security Council held a late-night meeting where one official allegedly called Britain's move reckless beyond belief. Yet, there are whispers that some in the State Department quietly admire what Starmer is doing, because he's doing what Washington has never had the political courage to do. Recognising Palestine, facing down Israel, and risking everything in the name of principle. If this gamble works, it could reset the entire Middle East peace process and force the US to rethink decades of policy. And here's the most chilling part. Nobody actually knows what Israel's next move will be. Diplomatic war could just be the opening shot. Some analysts are warning that covert retaliation is not off the table. Cyber operations, intelligence leaks, targeted diplomatic pressure campaigns. This isn't just politics anymore. It's a full-spectrum test of Britain's resilience. Right now, every intelligence agency, from MI6 to the CIA, is on high alert. This is what people mean when they say the world order is shifting. What we're watching isn't just a diplomatic spat. It's the birth of a new geopolitical reality where Britain is willing to defy one of its closest allies and stake its future on a bet that the rest of the world will reward its courage. So here's the burning question that will decide everything. Is Israel bluffing, or are they about to escalate this into a crisis that could make Suez, 1956, look like a tea party? Because if they go all in, if they actually cut ties and isolate Britain on the world stage, then Starmer isn't just risking his premiership, he's risking Britain's global standing for a generation. Either this ends with Britain becoming the bold architect of a new Middle East peace framework, or with Keir Starmer becoming the Prime Minister who triggered a historic diplomatic collapse. There is no middle ground here. No easy way out. The next 72 hours could change everything, not just for Britain and Israel, but for the entire balance of power in the Middle East. Here's where things get absolutely wild. The ripple effects of Israel's diplomatic war message are now spiralling far beyond London. Sources inside the Israeli cabinet are leaking that this isn't just about punishing Britain diplomatically. It's about sending a warning to every Western government considering recognition of Palestine. Cross this line and you will pay. That's why this two-word message is being described as the new red line in Middle East politics. European capitals are now frozen, waiting to see how hard Israel actually hits Britain. If Israel follows through with sanctions, trade restrictions, or intelligence downgrades, the EU will have to choose sides, and that could fracture European unity on foreign policy overnight. Brussels hates being forced into a corner, and Starmer may have just put them there. But the real drama is happening inside Labour. Whistleblowers say the atmosphere in Downing Street is like a political thriller. Aides are sleeping in offices, phones ringing non-stop, foreign policy staff reportedly fighting over how far to push back against Israel's threats. Starmer is said to be personally drafting a new statement, weighing every single word, because one wrong move could either defuse the crisis or blow it wide open. Some senior Labour MPs are warning him not to back down an inch, saying that if he caves now, Britain will look weak and the entire recognition move will collapse under pressure. Others are urging compromise, arguing that a total freeze with Israel could backfire in the next election if there's even a single security incident that Britain fails to prevent. It's a knife's edge situation, and Starmer knows it. Meanwhile, Israel is doubling down on its message. Leaks from Jerusalem suggest that Netanyahu's government is preparing a list of retaliatory options, everything from cancelling state visits to suspending high-level military cooperation. Israeli media is already running headlines calling Starmer the Prime Minister of Hamas, language so harsh it's shocking even veteran commentators. And this is where the panic really starts to spread. Britain's Jewish community is now caught in the middle. Community leaders are pleading for calm, warning that this diplomatic fight could spill over into domestic tensions if not handled carefully. Anti-Semitic incidents are already ticking up online, and police are on high alert for protests outside Parliament. But here's the most fascinating part. The Arab world is treating this like a historic opportunity. Saudi Arabia's foreign minister publicly praised Starmer's courage, while the UAE announced a fresh wave of investment talks, essentially daring Israel to cut Britain off while they move closer. Qatar is reportedly offering to mediate, trying to position itself as the bridge between Britain and the wider Muslim world. This is where the economic stakes come into focus. If Britain can ride out this storm, the potential payoff is enormous. New trade deals, energy partnerships, and billions in Gulf investment that could help rebuild Britain's struggling economy. But if the gamble fails, Britain risks isolating itself from both Israel and its most important intelligence allies in Washington. Washington, by the way, is now quietly furious. Sources say Biden's team is holding back-to-back calls with British and Israeli officials, trying to prevent a total rupture. One US diplomat was overheard saying, "This is the worst crisis in the special relationship since Suez." That's not an exaggeration. If Britain and Israel really enter a diplomatic freeze, it would send shockwaves through every Western security network, from MI6 to the CIA. Republican lawmakers are already demanding hearings on whether Britain can still be trusted with shared intelligence. In other words, this has gone from a foreign policy story to a full-blown national security emergency. And yet, despite all of this chaos, Starmer doesn't look ready to blink. Insiders describe him as calm, almost defiant, insisting that Britain can't reverse its position just because another country threatens retaliation. Some in his inner circle are calling this his Churchill moment, the time when he proves whether he can stand up under pressure or folds when the heat gets too high. The next 48 hours will decide everything, whether Britain and Israel patch things up or head into the first real diplomatic freeze of the modern era.